Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar to preview the latest updates coming to the Customer Administration Portal and to Atlas. My name is Bill Balvans, and I'm the training specialist here at Voyant. We will record today's session and make it available via email later today. If you have any questions throughout this webinar, please don't hesitate to ask using the question feature of the webinar console. Ready for the next slide, Gary?
Yes. Oh, hang on.
Gary Wilson, our longtime Director of Product Management, joins us today to present the customer experience improvements coming to the CAP and Atlas portals. With an extensive background in product management, Gary is an expert on unified communications, and he is responsible for the Atlas and CAP products for channel and private label partners. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Gary.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's take this out of our full screen there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go through, we got a lot of new features that are going to be coming in, going into the system this weekend. A lot of features in Atlas and CAP, and they kind of range from some minor updates to some larger ones. And so I'm just going to kind of go through them. I've sort of categorized these into Atlas management features and things like that. So we can kind of focus on specific areas as we go through the list of features that are going to be going in. So with that, let me go ahead and get started. So the first thing that's going to be going in from a management feature is, kind of a minor update, but we've run into this many times, and probably you have as well. Somebody requests either Atlas password or their Atlas user account, they need their password reset. So you reset their password, and the next question they ask you is, I don't remember what login ID I created. You can't see that in Atlas today, so we are adding a new login column ID so you can see their login name, and then that way, if they've forgotten what their username was, you can click that. You can see the column. When you edit on that user account as well, it'll show you what their login ID is. So that way you can better assist your fellow Atlas users. The next thing we're adding, the functional admin. So if you have a user that is a functional admin, we're trying to kind of round out this particular role so that somebody that's at a slightly lower privilege can do more work. The functional admins are going to be changed so that they can now assign a workflow. Previously, you had to be a partner admin to be able to do that. That'll make that a functional admin role a bit easier to be for somebody that's working service orders, for instance. That gives them pretty much everything they need to be able to do to work through a service order. All right. The next thing we're adding, so we're going to be adding more and more of these CSV downloads throughout Atlas and CAP. And so one of the new ones we're adding this time around is in DID management. You're now going to have a download CSV button. So if you ever wanted to get a list of all the phone numbers that you have assigned within your partner setup, you can click download CSV. And you'll see you've got a state filter. So you can filter by state, you can filter by carrier, filter by status if you needed to see what numbers you have available still. And then when you click the download, so if I say available, I don't know, in Florida, I can click download CSV. What it does then is it will generate that report in the background, and it's going to send you an email to the email address that you have for your Atlas account. That CSV will be attached to that email. So you can generate those reports anytime you need them. It'll be a nice, convenient feature there. Okay. Now, here's a little bit larger one. It's improved email management. So what we're trying to do is there's been a feature within Atlas for a long period of time with all of the emails that Atlas and CAP sends out. Most people don't know about that particular feature, don't use it routinely. And we get questions about things like, can I disable certain emails? We're trying to make that whole process a little bit easier. So let me jump over to email management. All right. Now from email management, what you can see is there's always this log. So if you're ever wondering if what emails are going out to your customers, who they're going to and from, this gives you all the information that's in there. So these are all the ones that are going out. Within email configuration, we have a list of all the different emails, but we're going to give you a manage button. It's going to let you do a couple things here a lot more quickly than you could before. So when you click that, going to bring up a list of, here's all of the emails. And you can go through them all, and you'll see it'll show you which ones are enabled, disabled. What you can do, though, is we're giving you the ability to go through and selectively enable and disable certain emails if you don't want those going out. Ones that have an asterisk, these are ones that we do go ahead and continue to send. So an activation email, kind of hard sometimes to progress without that if you want somebody to be able to create their account, and some of these other ones that are in here. You can also filter those. So if you're doing both enterprise and residential, you can say, well, I just want to see which ones go out to enterprise. Or I can filter that down and just say, well, okay, which ones are going to residential? The other thing you can do, there's some emails that go just to Atlas users. So for instance, this one here, the MACD change, it says this is an Atlas configuration one. I don't really care on that one. I really want to see just the ones that are going out to the customers. So I can further filter that and say, okay, all right, here's all the customer-facing emails. You can go through and individually enable or disable these. But we also give you a bulk action. So for instance, if I want to shut off, actually, let's save that because I made that change. If you want to go ahead and say, let's say, disable all of them, I really don't want any of these emails to go out. So I can just click that, save it. And now I've turned off all the ones that I can turn off. I've turned them all off in one shot. Or I can turn around and bulk enable those as well. Right. So we give you a lot more control over that. The control was there before. It's a little bit hidden. You have to go into each individual email to see those. So this pulls it forward, gives you ability to control all those in one place. One thing that you could always do before, like for instance, here's that activation email. If you actually open that up, you can see. So here's the subject line, and these are some things that are dynamically inserted content. Here's the email addresses that they're from, and two, these are things that are in your address book. So you've got your address book, and there's a lot of email types that are created here. These will show up as entries for any of these emails. If you're wondering where all the information comes from, right? And then the actual content is here. So this is the actual content. So that's always been there. It's not used routinely, I guess, but we're just trying to make it easier for you at least to be able to, turn off or turn on various emails within the system. Okay, any further questions on that one?
Doesn't look like we have any questions so far. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to put them in the questions box that's in your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get them answered for you right away.
All right, so this next one we're doing is, today we're not really supporting both Canada and Puerto Rico, but because we're using our vendor, our sister company in Tokeland underneath for porting, what happens when you come in and use this portability check tool, because they support Canadian and Puerto Rican porting, if you put those numbers in here and do a portability check, it'll come back and say it's portable. So we want to kind of shut that off for right now. We're basically just going to block any of those numbers from saying that they're portable. And we still have work to do to support address formats for Canada, so and any other country. So we want to fully support the address formats before we start opening up for porting for other countries. All right, so the next one, this is another big one that's going to be going in. This has been a common ask from a lot of you in the ability to default create your PBXs with international turned off. So here's how we're doing that. When you go into your partner setup, what you'll see is you can come down to the basic information, come down to the bottom. There's going to be two additional controls you're going to have in partner setup. One is to separately enable and disable international calling for enterprise. And then if you're selling residential, you can do that for residential as well. What that'll do, as soon as let's say you turn that to disabled, because today the default is enabled, turn that to disabled, any new PBX or any new residential customer that you create going forward, then will automatically have the international disabled. Okay. Now, once you do that, you can still control them at the PBX or the user level. Let me jump into a customer here real quick, and I'll show you how you go about doing that. Grab this one. So once you've disabled it, let's say you've got a customer that says, you know what, I want residential or I want international turned on. And again, so one thing we have to keep in mind is that this controls specifically the 22 countries that we typically allow. If you need to go beyond that, I think there's a defined process for how you get the international open for other places. But what you'll do is you'll click this button, so you'll see a phone with a little international feature on here. So this PBX right now, all of the users in it are disabled in terms of being able to place outbound calls or international calls. So what that means too, though, the other thing we're doing is that if you go into CAP now for this PBX and you go to the outgoing call section, you'll see that the ability to change a user from international to on or off is now gone. You won't be able to see that. So that way, if you have given CAP access to any of your end customers, you have international turned off for them. They can't go in there and just start turning it on at will on the particular users. So this gives you the ability to say, let's say you want to develop your own waiver process for somebody to sign. Once they sign it, they give it to you. Then you can come in here for their PBX and enable that, and then save that. And when you do that, that will turn on international for all the users in that. Well, actually, basically what it does is it gives the admin access to that. So now they can go in, and as today, you can go in and individually choose which users you want international to be enabled and disabled for. Okay. And at the same time, the same thing exists for a residential. Let me pull up a residential one. I think I have one that might be active. This is our staging system. So for this one, for residential, again, you can pull this up. This is basically just anybody that's in there. You're either going to enable or disable the ability to call international for that user. There isn't an end user admin cap. There's a user admin cap, and you don't want them to have the ability to enable or disable international on their own. So this basically just shuts it on or off for all the users within that residential group, okay? And just sort of a quick way to think about that, kind of put a couple slides here together from the international settings. So if you, in the partner level settings, if you have international off, the PBX level setting is off. That means the admin user can't change that setting. And so the international is now all disabled. If you still have it off, you can individually turn it on for each of the PBXs. That allows the admin user to be able to go in there and they can make those changes, and that is, they can make that change per user. So if they have some users they don't want to make international calls, you can turn that off and you can enable it for the ones that do need that ability. If you default create your PBXs with international on, you can still go into the customer level setting, the PBX level setting, and turn that off for any PBXs that you don't want to have that ability. That removes that ability for that the admin cap to be able to, they can't really change the international settings. It's all disabled. And then again, if both of them are on, the admin user can go in there and make those changes. Same thing for residential. If you've got that at the partner leveling off, the default, of course, is going to be that it's off, and the international be disabled. You still have that control. You can go in and turn it on and off for individual customers. And again, if you default those on, you can turn it off. So you have full control basically over, whether a PBX or whether a user can have international on or off. All right, I know that's been a big ask. We put some thought into this, try to give you the, as much control as possible over the international settings. And we're probably going to continue to fine tune that, but that's what we're going to be putting in for this particular release. So any questions on that feature? Any thumbs up on it?
Hand raises, anything.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. So let's talk then about some of the sales orders features. Go back over here. Let's go talk to sales orders. So one of the changes we're making, previously we've always had this menu item within the tools in which you could actually generate kind of a separate equipment pre-order. We're going to be removing that one because, I mean, in reality, it just doesn't quite work the way it's supposed to. It does a lot of things in terms of the billing's incorrect. It submits the order to us, and we have to process through it, so it's a little bit cumbersome to use. What we've done back when we introduced the MACD changes is we gave you the ability to order just an equipment order, and so that's what we're going to be recommending going forward. So, for instance, if you wanted to go, just order equipment, then what we're going to let you do is put equipment on the order, and that's all that's going to be ordered. When you process the order through, it will actually show up as, in your PBX, and it'll show up as a not active device. So, for instance, let me here. I'm going to add.
Hey, Gary, we did end up with a question about international. If you want to cover that before you go on.
Mm-hmm.
The question was, does the international setting apply to already created PBXs?
The partner level one does not. That only affects any of the existing PBXs. So if you want to go in, for instance, because right now they're all being default created on. So if you want to go through, then once that's put in there, if you want to go through and start shutting it off for some of your PBXs, you can go in and for each PBX bring that up, that setting up, and turn it off for that PBX. So it'll be what we're trying not to change things the way they are today because we don't know what settings have been changed in the past. So we don't want to affect anything currently. So we're just leaving things alone, and then that'll give you the control to go in and make those changes.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay. So for equipment pre-order, if you wanted to order equipment, let's say you want to order for a specific customer, and you always have to make sure that this has been turned on in your partner setup. If you go to partner setup, there is an item in there for devices. If you weren't aware of it before, if you're not using it today, go ahead and turn that on. What that does, that'll show devices in your menu. When you choose that, you'll be able to choose from any of the devices that you have enabled in your partner setup. So for instance, I can come down here and I can put a 411 on here. All right, I'm going to order, let's say I'm going to order 3 of them for this location. I don't even need to, so as long as I have an existing PBX, I don't even need to order a seat. I can just put equipment orders in. And then let me say that I'm going to go add some devices here to my other location. Because actually there's a couple other things I want to show here next. And so this sort of leads into that one. Let me go add some devices for the next one. And what I want to add, I just add a few more phones to this location. Because it kind of what I want to show is kind of goes into the how we do. We're making some updates to how we do shipping calculations and sales order tax calculations. So this will let me actually lead into that, and you can kind of see what that looks like. It's taking a little bit since I'm doing this over the VPN. There we go. All right, so let me go. I'm going to add some additional devices for this location. Well, let's add a few for that one. Now, one thing you'll notice is that I've gone through and I've added a couple. I've added a line item to my Plymouth location, put some phones on it. I just did it for Boulder location, put some phones on it. I didn't even bother calculating shipping, and I didn't even bother calculating tax. So we'll kind of lead into that. But that's how you're going to go do equipment orders. You just add them in, to an existing PBX. If you have an existing PBX, so for instance, let's say you want to order inventory that you keep at your office, just order them against your existing PBX that you use. And then those will go into your devices widget in the customers tab for your PBX, and you'll see them in there. They'll be not active devices. It'll have the MAC addresses in there. You can take one off the shelf, go find it in there, and then click on the remove option and remove it from your PBX. And then you can use that on any new order or import that in if you're doing like a device swap or something for a customer. Okay. So let me go through how you're going to do, the shipping and calculation stuff now. So I put a couple items on this order. So now I've deferred all of my shipping calculations and tax calculations until the end. So now I can click on calculate shipping. So instead of having to go from location to location, so I'd have to go back to the Plymouth location and recalculate shipping there and choose it and apply it. Then I'd have to flip to the Plymouth location or the Boulder location and do the same. Now you can, from anywhere, whatever location you're on, you can click calculate shipping. It'll pop this up. And now you can say, you can independently calculate the shipping, or you can just say, I calculate all. I can calculate my shipping for all those locations. And then when I'm done with that, I can just apply that same, the shipping, and it's calculated. And also, this is another thing you'll see is we actually do some live updates. So rather than keep having to constantly refresh as we're getting the results back, we apply that, and you'll see that happen right there. So I can just apply that. I'm done. So I've added my calculations for the shipping. That's all going to go on both locations. I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. If you're remember, these are estimated taxes. So if you're using our tax calculation, same thing. You click that, and you'll notice that both of these are up here. The tax calculations previously did take a while. We made some vast improvements in the tax calculation. So if you're using that, it actually goes really quick now. We bypassed a lot of stuff that was there before, and we got straight to our taxing vendor, and we get the results directly. And so you see how fast that was. And now you can apply the taxation. Okay, so made some definite improvements there on the sales ordering. Hopefully those will be much easier to use now. Any questions at this point?
You're getting praise and thank yous, but no real questions.
I'll take praise and thank yous any day. All right, let's talk about the next set of things. So within the customer management section, there's a couple of some other changes that we're also making. So let me go pull up a customer here. Pick on Bob. So the first thing we've done is that in your features and service widget, you can actually make some changes and apply some filters and stuff. So for instance, let's say I'm going to a seat package. If I've got filters and I've got, you default this to active because a lot of times a lot of stuff builds up in there, canceled seats and things, you don't necessarily always want to see those. But what happens today, let's say I come in here and I'm going to choose, let's choose this user, and let's say I suspend their service. Now, what's going to happen is this is going to go through various state changes. And so you're going to see this as active. And then it'll go through submitted and other changes. And what will happen is as you do a filter, with active, eventually that's going to wind up disappearing. So if I refresh, see now it's come off the list. Well, it's kind of annoying to me. I really would like to just watch it go through its states. But today, if you go back and let's say you change it to all, great, I can see it. But if you refresh, it wipes out your filter, and you're having to keep going back to filter and choose all. So we've addressed that. Now it's just going to stay there. Whatever you choose your filter option, it's going to remain, and you can just keep refreshing until it completes the process. Okay, so that's a quick usability change that we made for that. The other thing you might have noticed, so yet another CSV download. So within your features and services, here's the download CSV. So now you can download this And what will happen is you'll get a list of all, basically everything that's in all 4 tabs. We'll pop this up. Give you an idea what that's going to look like. So here it is. So you're going to have, you see all the usernames, all the service names, all the DIDs, extensions, the devices they have, the locations. So pretty much anything that's in that widget, we're going to dump out in a CSV. So that way it's a lot easier, especially if you got something that has a lot of users in a PBX and it's kind of hard to go through it in just the UI. This will let you dump it to a CSV and you can filter through it that way. Okay.
Got a question that popped up here.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get a CSV download for the devices section?
Absolutely. We'll add that to our list. I think I already even have it on our list. We're kind of going through and adding more and more of these CSV downloads all over the place. And so each release, we're kind of putting more of these in there. Devices, yes, that's another good one to have in there.
Thank you.
All right. And the third item that we've done is for the conference bridges. So if you had a lot of different conference bridges, so let's say you had some personal bridges. So for instance, this one here, I've got a single personal audio bridge. But let's say you had 6 of them. It was always hard to tell if you needed to cancel one, which one to cancel, or if you had, the standard corporate bridge or audio conference bridge. It was hard to tell which one to cancel because they all share the same phone number, right? So what we've done is within CAP, you have labels for each of these different items. So let me go see if I can. We'll go launch CAP here for this one because I'll need CAP next. So if you go into your conference bridge section, you've always been able to change a label name. So for instance, these are just generic. Here's audio conference 1, personal audio conference. You can edit that name. And what we're doing is basically whatever this label name is, we're now going to be showing that also in Atlas in this label column. So that way it'll make it much easier if you needed to actually, if you got 6 of these in here and you want to cancel one of them or change the service on one of them, you can quickly identify which one you're affecting. Okay. So those are going to be the changes that are going in for the customer management part. A couple of quick changes that we're going to be doing for the SIP trunking. One of the changes that we're making is that if a call comes from one of the customers that's on a PBX and goes towards a 911, sometimes what will happen is we wind up sending the username as enterprise user. That's what goes to the 911 center. We're going to change that so we're not sending enterprise user anymore. It should go at least with the company name. The next thing we're changing, this routinely happens, is that there's an unreachable timeout. So if you're using the failover options that are on the SIP trunks, there's a default timeout that was getting set at 1 second. So we're going to be changing that default timeout to 3 seconds. That way, if you have a PBX that's a little bit slower to respond, or maybe it's doing some forwarding processing, usually that happens within 1 to 1.5 seconds. But sometimes it tended to go over the 1, of course, and so that's when things would start failing. So we're going to default that out to 3 seconds, and then that way we shouldn't be running that anymore. Okay, any questions on that? I'm going to go on to the CAP section.
No questions. Let's hit up CAP.
All right. Moving on to CAP. All right, so let's talk about the changes that are going into CAP. So the first one we're doing, this is the ability to import speed dial lists. This is it's kind of the beginning of another series of things that we're going to be doing. Let me go pick up a user here. But we're going to be making more changes to where you can kind of bulk import things over time. And so let me go, I'm going to go pick this user, edit them. If you go into the outgoing calls section, which is where the speed dial list is at, when you open this up, you'll notice we now have an import option here, right? So rather than clicking this and then entering each one one by one, you can click import, and then we give you a template that you can download here. And so when you download that template, it just has 3 columns in there for the code number, the phone number, the name, and then you can import that back in. So that way, if you've got a common speed dial list, it's it's much simpler to go through each user and import that into them. Adding that change in. The next one, so the corporate directory. So currently, you can create your own entries that will appear in the corporate directory. So you can add a contact. What was happening before was we would only allow you to import, do a contact, and you can enter a name and the phone number. Phone number can only be a 10-digit extension. So you could now enter things like, star code if you want to create a contact that routes to some voicemail box, for instance. All right, so I could create that contact. I could sync them all up again. Yeah, let's get everybody synced up. And then now all those users should have, in fact, those get added towards the end. So yes, here's the one I just added. At the same time, you can also create ones that are just extension numbers. Okay. And that's also going to be, there's an import CSV that you can import those same users. Will support that on the import as well. The next one, client center, actually comp center. Let me need to do that in a different customer because I think that one doesn't have a call center. So let me load this other one. Just trying to remember which one now I had a call center in. Oh, right. So one of the things we do, we get a lot of questions that says, ask of, hey, what's that client center URL? So what we're going to be doing is we're just going to give you a quick link within CAP. So anytime you go to the call center settings or the call center, there's a new icon here, just a little link icon. If you click that, that's going to pull out the the link for that. You can copy that to your clipboard, or you can click that link and that'll launch that one. You always get those. Okay. And then let's see. So that one is going there. So that way you've got a really convenient way to get to that call center URL. The next one is a primer line. So let me go in here to this location. So previously the primer lines, you really didn't have control over what the caller ID was that was going out for those. So if you're making local calls on those primer lines, you couldn't see, it would just be whatever was the system set. So we're now doing the same thing for the primer. So here's my primer. I've just renamed it lobby in this PBX. You'll see that there's a new outgoing calls tab that exists for all the other seats, but doesn't exist for primers today. But we've added the calling line ID field here, so you can click that, and now you can choose that. So it'll be any virtual number, your company main number. I only have the company main number here. But if I had other virtual numbers that were pointed to, hunt groups or call centers, where those would show in this list as well. So I could choose which number this particular primer seat would project as its caller ID. Okay.
So just to clarify, the primer line still won't have an individual DID, but you can have it project out any virtual number related to a group service in the PBX.
Right, exactly. Because a lot of times what people want is they just want the company number to, company main number to go out when they're calling out from a primary line, and so that way you can make that setting. Okay, so that will go in.
Yep. Got one question that just popped up here. You say primary lines don't get a DID, yet they show an assigned DID in Atlas.
Yeah, there's one that gets assigned, and the reason for that is for 911. So that way we can take that number and register it with the address for that. So if you call 911, that's how it's being looked up for that specific seat. That's the purpose of that. Okay. All right. So the next one, hoteling. I'm not sure how often people use hoteling. Hopefully this actually make it a lot easier, and maybe it will get used more routinely. So today, the hoteling option for the phone. So if you go into CAP, you can click on a particular device, and you'll have a hoteling button here, and you can enable a particular device to be a host. And when something is a host, that means a user could log into that phone and take over that phone. So you can if you can have some guest phones that are sitting around, and people can walk up to those and they can hotel it, especially if you have people that travel between locations, or you're hot desking for call center or something like that. But right now you have to go through the voice portal menu to be able to take control of that particular phone. So what we've done is we've made this a lot easier. When you click the hoteling button and you enable this as a guest, what we're going to be doing is we're doing an update for the Polycoms, so that when you enable this particular phone for hoteling, it'll enable a new soft key on the phone. So typically it gets hidden under more, but when you press that, you'll see a guest in button. When you press the guest in button on the phone, then it will prompt you to enter a username and a password. So if you're trying to guest into that phone, you will enter your DID as the username and your voicemail passcode as the password. When you do that, the phone then updates, and the extension number will reflect your extension number rather than what's assigned to it. And that association will last for 12 hours. Once you guest into a phone, though, the soft key will change, and it will say guest out. So if you want to log out of that phone at any time, you just press the soft key, the guest out soft key, and that phone then reverts control back to its original extension assignment. Okay, so it'll make getting into the phone, guesting into the phone, and out of the phone a whole lot easier. The other thing you can do too, though, is that from CAP, you could also decide, if you want to control it via administrator, somebody can come in and say, you know what, I want Bob to take control of that phone right now, and you can assign it to them. So this will let you, do the assignment, the whole telling assignments from within CAP, or if you're just trying to find out who owns the phone, but it's remote, so you can't just walk over to it and see who owns it. You can use CAP to go check and see, is there already a guest logged into that phone, and which guest is it? So if they forgot to log out or something, you can come set them to none and log them out.
I'll be the first one to say that's a pretty cool feature.
All right. There you go. So that should make the hoteling a whole lot easier to use, much easier to explain to people how that works. All right. And then the final thing we're adding to CAP is around BLF. So you go open up this user again. You go edit their settings. So the BLF settings are under call control. So when I click on call control, I've got the shared line appearances in the busy lamp field. So when I select this, you'll see that there's this new slider for enable call park notification. So what this will do, so if I come in here and add a busy lamp, I want a busy lamp a particular seat. If I turn this on, now I'll still have the busy lamp there, but now if somebody parks a call against this particular phone, then my busy lamp will reflect the call park. I'll get that yellow P character. So just like if somebody parks a call against your main line and you see that yellow P character show up on your extension, this will enable the ability to be able to see if a call is parked against somebody else's line if you're doing a busy lamp on that line. Okay, so that way, at least somebody can tell if calls are getting parked and somebody's getting lost. You'll be able to actually see where those calls are getting parked. Okay. Any questions on any of the content? We've covered off on a lot. Let me go back and review because I'm going to save the last one for last here. So the Atlas management features talked about being able to show the user's login ID so you can help out all your friendly Atlas users. The functional admin, being able to assign that workflow now. The DID management, having the CSV download. Portability check tool, removing the ability to find that Canadian and Puerto Rican numbers are portable. And then all of the options around being able to default the international off or on for all of your PBX creations and residential user creations as well, right? The next thing is the sales order features that we've added, removing the equipment order. Kind of talked about how you would go about doing equipment orders today now. And then the improvements around the shipping calculations as well as the sales order tax calculation improvements. And then from the customer management, we talked about the filters being applied, basically being retained anytime you do a refresh on those. The CSV download being added to the features and services, as well as that conference bridger label. The two changes to the SIP trunking to make those better, as well as the ability to import those speed dials into CAP. The corporate directory changes so that we allow extensions of star codes to be used for those contacted numbers, client URL, call center URL. The primer line changes, the hoteling and the BLF.
We got a question that came in for you, Gary. Just a request, actually. Could you add a park key to the BLF that's a one touch to place the caller on park and one touch to pick up the caller that has been on park?
Now, BLF has a specific way that it works. So there is a not so obvious option within the Polycoms. If you do have a BLF on somebody and they do park a call against that line, somebody parks a call against that line, if you press and hold the BLF, and I think it's for about 3 or 4 seconds, an additional soft key will appear, but you will have no idea that it actually appeared because it hides behind the more key. And it's called park info, and you can go press the park info key and you can see who's on park and you have the ability to retrieve it. But it's so non-obvious how to use it that I hesitate to recommend it to anybody.
Is there a way we could make that more obvious?
No, I mean, BLFs work a specific way just because they're BLFs. So yeah, that's kind of how they work.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? Go ahead and put them in the questions box and we'll get them answered for you. Right.
And then there's one more update. So as you think about your questions, one of the things that comes up a lot here recently, especially with the recent iOS 12.1 rollout. So client updates. So this is probably, at the top of everybody's question list. I'm surprised somebody hasn't asked it yet. As far as the iOS and Android clients, so we are getting ready to push new ones out. We're not going to be doing it this release only because the support teams and stuff will really hate us if we put an Atlas Cap release out and a new client release at the same time. I'm going to defer this until next week, and we'll get some notifications and things out about that as well. So there's a number of you that have been participating in the beta. And it's great because it's great to have that kind of activity on that and to find out that, yep, this is really working. So we're going to be pushing these out. The advantages to the new clients is they use a feature called push notifications. And what this does, for many of you that have been using the iOS client for the years and you've always had that auto log out feature. We thought about charging extra for that, but we backed off on that. So this fixes that. So you won't be getting auto logged out all the time when your phone app goes in the background. And then on Android, the current application really kind of uses a lot of battery. The push notifications really helps a lot with the battery consumption on the Android client, so it makes a big improvement there. In addition, on iOS, the application uses something called CallKit, and that makes the client an actual phone device. So now when a call comes in, you'll get the usual slider that lets you answer the phone like a real phone call. So there's a couple of other things that I'm going to enable. One of them is My Room. So today in the desktop client, you've got the group chat features, and you'll see here that in the client today you only have 4 of these tabs across here. This is the Android client. They're on the bottom on iOS, but you'll see the My Room and the My Room client or My Room tab here. When you start that up, you'll be able to do group chats. The next thing is we're going to enable video for point-to-point calling on this one, just like was enabled for the desktop client. We'll enable that here as well. Okay. And then the next thing is going to be the same thing with the VI Presence. So what we've done on, if you're using VI Presence, I think most of you are using in command, which is great because that means we can update those in the store, and then that update will push out to your customers, and they'll get the new version of the client automatically if they have the auto updates turned on. For anybody using VI Presence, that application will essentially be turned down. I think on March 9th, I think that's Google will wind up removing it regardless on that date. But we are shifting to the Voyant Connect brand. So again, for the mobile apps, once it's released, don't go download Voyant Connect today because it won't work. You'll have to wait until we push the new one out, and then you can download the Voyant Connect one for those customers.
I have a question about Voyant Connect for you, Gary.
Okay.
If you receive an incoming cellular call while on an active end-command call, does it terminate the end-command call with this newly updated app, or does it keep it live?
If I remember right, let's see, it's a different direction. If you receive an incoming cellular call,
in the past, we had an issue where it would either put the VoIP call on hold or terminate it entirely, because it provides the cellular call with priority.
Right. I'll have to try that. I think it's going to work properly this time because of the fact that it's actually, since it's using CallKit, it'll integrate better into iOS than previously. That was kind of the part of the problem before, was it was just a standard application. It didn't really have the ability to be a first-class citizen in the phone community in iOS. So that's one of the big advantages of using CallKit. But I'll get that verified.
Okay, here's another one. Is there a way to simply park a call to an orbit so you can have like a park 1, park 2, pick up 1, pick up 2 button on the soft keys instead of having to park to a particular extension so you could answer the call from any phone with those soft keys? There
is. The downside to that, I guess, really is that within the BroadSoft world, you wind up burning extra seats with that. So you wind up having to purchase some seats to use as those park orbits. And then what you can do, we're doing this with a few, is you can go into, let's say I want to use this as a park orbit. I can edit this user. And it's probably going to time out on me. No, it didn't. There's this feature that probably most people are scratching their heads going, why would I ever use this? This automatic hold retrieve. If you enable this for a seat, any call that gets delivered to it gets automatically put on hold. And so what you can do is you can add 3 seats to your PBX, go to those 3 seats, name them orbit 1, 2, 3, enable the automatic hold retrieve feature on those seats. And then if you put a BLF on each of the phones to those seats, if to park the call, when you have an active call, just hit the transfer button, and then hit the software the line key that you have that one programmed on, and it'll transfer the call to that BLF, which is that particular seat, and the automatic hold retrieve will automatically put that call on hold. Then what happens is, and then of course the busy lamp shows up for everybody, so everybody sees that there's a call there. And then what you can do is any phone that has a BLF on it, they can just press the BLF key, which then places a call to that, and that's the automatic retrieve part, and you just pull that call right back to you. So that's one way to accomplish that. You can kind of create a one button. It's really two operations for the park, because you're doing a transfer to that particular orbit, that parking spot, and then you just one button retrieve it. So that's certainly one way you could do that.
Interesting. Back on the Voyant Connect and In Command, will the username and password stay the same for the new client?
Yes. So for In Command, yes, it'll stay the same. Voyant Connect, if you're using the Voyant Connect client, it'll be just like the desktop. The first thing it'll ask you is a region. And for anybody on this call, the region you're going to choose is the formerly VI Presence region, just like the desktop client.
All right. Any other questions, everyone?
Anything else? We got a lot of good questions there.
Yeah, we do. Doesn't. All right. Well, let's let it sit 1 more minute, see if anyone's typing something that's going to pop up here. I thank you all for joining us this afternoon for this webinar. We like to be able to show off the new product advancements and features when we can, and it's always great to have Gary here to help us out. Scott has a question. In the Atlas sales order, can it be defaulted to customer-owned device?
No, so you can't really default it to a customer-owned device. I mean, we can certainly look at that, for a future one, but I mean, typically most customers will flip back and forth. I know some probably routinely order either order devices elsewhere and bring them in, or prefer to have a stock, so they always have some ready to go when they put orders in. That's something we can certainly look at.
All right. One more thing. Will they be able to get a printout of this presentation? Will we make that available? The PowerPoint?
I certainly can.
Okay. All right. Looks like that's all of them here so far. All right. Any last words, Gary?
Well, it's just going to be another big release. We got more content coming up. I mean, we're going to be doing releases routinely. We have in the past, and we're going to continue that. So continue to look for further updates. And again, we're always open for feedback. Yeah, where your salespeople and account management people live, and all of that stuff gets fed back to me when we keep it all tracked. And so anything else that you've got, feed it to them. I'll get a hold of it.
And the release date on this again, Gary?
It's going to be going in this weekend. In fact, what's going to happen is that a number of the changes will wind up going in probably late Friday evening, and with a lot of testing and validation and stuff done over the entire course of the weekend. So you come in Monday morning, everything's going to be ready to go.
All right. I think think Melissa Johnston wanted to say something before we close out.
Oh, no. I was making another request for something else. But earlier in the presentation, we were talking about like the functional admin.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to throw out a reminder that now that this is going to come out, anybody that you had set up, any employee that you had set up as a partner admin that doesn't need access to your product catalog and branding and things like that, you may want to go in and update those users that they can be a functional admin now, and they can still assign the workflows and things like that.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I think we're going to give you about 2 minutes of your time back. I appreciate you coming to these, and you guys have a great day.
Thanks a lot, everyone.